Buongiorno and welcome to another exciting edition of Meet Your Neighbor. My name is Ron Falconi. I had this idea probably back in the fall of 2006, where I wanted to interview local politicians, local business people here in the area, so all of you could have the opportunity to meet your neighbor. We have a very special guest today. He is my friend, and he is the Republican candidate for Medina County Prosecutor, Forrest Thompson. Mr. Thompson,
Thanks.
Welcome to the studio, sir.
Thank you for having me on.
Hey, Forrest, tell me something about yourself that maybe not too many people know about you.
Well, probably the most oblique thing that I can tell you. I am badly left-handed.
Badly left-handed?
And there's no other way to describe it. I am left-hand, left-eye dominant, and it's difficult, and anybody who's out there who's been in that same circumstance knows it is a right-hander's world. And that's been an issue for all through academia, all through school.
So even when you're going through school, you're very conscious of your left-handedness, or perhaps that it's a right-handed world, maybe.
Oh no! There was nothing discreet about it. The desks were right-handed desks, so we didn't have that little arm thing on the side that we could use. And the teachers, I went to a very rural grade school. I only had 3 elementary school teachers in the entire 6 years of my grade school, and so each teacher you had for 2 years, and we had 2 grades in each classroom. So first and second was one teacher, and it was a yeoman's task to try to make me right-handed, and they failed miserably. And as I was pointing out to you, that even pens and pencils are right-handed. So it's always been an issue.
That, yes.
It's always been an issue, and it's a compromise issue. And especially, I'm an outdoorsman. I like to hunt and fish, and a lot of equipment has always been designed for the right-hander. So sure.
But Boris, you're running for Medina County Prosecutor. First of all, tell me why. Why do you want to do it?
The biggest reason that I decided to accept this challenge was because the arena of prosecution and the law enforcement in our community is faced with new challenges that they're not unique to our community because they're everywhere. They're in every community, in every county, in every state in the country. Specifically when we're addressing things like the heroin epidemic. Okay. This has brought on new challenges that we have never been designed to address sufficiently, and so we're in many ways we're learning as we go, and it is incumbent upon any public office, and specifically in this instance, the prosecutor's office, to determine what their role will be. I am of the opinion that the prosecutor's office should take an advanced, assertive role, and a proactive, if you will, rather than a reactive role. Okay. I think we have to, and never to be misconstrued with delegalizing any kind of drugs or legalizing any sort of drugs. But I think one of the things that we should take a page from the playbook of Hamilton County, for instance, and other places, Gloucester, Massachusetts, where initiatives have been created to allow people who are drug abusers to surrender themselves to law enforcement. And I say surrender in sort of a tongue-in-cheek way, but go to a law enforcement office, turn their drugs in, turn in their paraphernalia, ask for help. These individuals, there's an organization called the Perry Project, which has gained some ground here in Medina County, specifically initiated or started in Lodi with Chief Keogh. And that program would connect this troubled person with a counselor, and they would facilitate that person into treatment. Many of those treatments are outside the state at the current time, but this is a growing trend. And the reason is it's an interdiction. It's an interdiction before they become a part of the system, and we have to use the resources. That is the county prosecutor's resources, the courthouse resources, the judicial resources, the legal resources.
So Forrest, this is like part of your vision then for the county?
It
then,
is.
to
It's
try to
a
be
critical
more-
part.
Okay.
It's an instrumental part of where I think the prosecutor's office needs to go. This is not a program of the prosecutor's office. This is a program that should be, in my opinion, embraced and endorsed by the prosecutor's office. Another issue that in my practice, because my practice incorporates so much probate litigation and civil litigation, and I've prosecuted many, and I say prosecute as in I have been the plaintiff in many civil cases, is exploitation of the elderly, financial exploitation of the elderly.
Okay.
It's an insidious crime. It's happening more and more. Some of it is driven by the drug issue, so they're somewhat interrelated. But many times I've had individuals that have lost their entire life savings. They've lost their homes. They've lost their dignity. More so than anything else, they've lost their self-esteem and their dignity because they found out that an individual that they trusted, that they signed a piece of paper and allowed that individual to have access to their funds, has depleted those funds. And I don't see these people being held accountable for it. That's an issue that if I become prosecutor is going to change, and it's going to change dramatically because they're not just going to be prosecuted, they're going to be a priority.
Okay. Forrest, so then maybe just building upon that, how would you, as if you're successful, how would you deal with the public then? What kind of overtures to the residents would you make as prosecutor?
Well, first and foremost, I think that the prosecutor's office needs to be in communication with the public on many issues. I think that it's incumbent on any elected official, but particularly the prosecutor, because they have so much power, they have so much discretionary authority. I think a prosecutor needs to be able to explain to the public, explain to the voters why they've done what they've done, when it can be explained without damaging or hurting a case. Interestingly enough, the only oversight of the prosecutor's office is the voting public.
Right.
Judges can't tell prosecutors what to do. That's a myth that I've heard throughout the community as I've spoken to organizations and people, and it's just not so. It's the voters that control.
Oh, yes.
And it's the voters who the prosecutor should answer to.
Forrest, what do you think are maybe the top issues facing the law today?
Well, obviously, you can't talk about the top leading issues facing the law without talking about heroin. Okay. And heroin, by necessity, addresses constitutional issues. We know that in a recent presidential debate, the stop and frisk issue, the Terry stop issue was raised and vetted. So constitutional issues that are ever evolving and ever changing because of the changing dynamic, not only of the legal environment, but of the criminal dynamic, the types of crimes that are being incurred, the frequency, the violence, the escalation of violence, and so often needless violence. So that's one of the major things is you have to address the legal fallout of the drug epidemic. The second is the absolutely overburdening of the court system.
Okay.
And again, this dovetails into the drugs. There are so many cases clogging the legal system that I feel that there are a lot of victims who never get their day in court. A lot of lesser felonies, there are no less victims.
Right.
And I think that part of the prosecutor's obligation is to speak to the victims, speak for them, and to hear them. Now, we have a victims assistance program, and I think it's a good program. I'd like to see that expanded.
Okay.
And of course, the second or the third, one of the third issues that I take very personally, because as I said, I am an outdoorsman, is our Second Amendment.
Okay.
It's under attack, and I will unabashedly state to you and to everyone that I am a supporter of the Second Amendment. And that's outside the realm of the prosecutor's office necessarily, but you've asked me a general question about
Yes.
the issues of the law. That's an issue that's very near and very dear to me, and I think that as a self-described, I guess, if you will, constitutionalist, I believe that the Constitution says what it says,
Okay.
and I believe that the Second Amendment says what it says, and I believe it needs to be protected.
Tell me about your educational background and where you worked in the past. And
Well,
the type of law that you practice. I know you touched on it before.
Well, my educational background was sort of a hit and miss. As I told you about my grade school, and then our high school was, because I grew up in a very rural area, our high school was all 7 through 12, all in one school. And that was an interesting issue, and it's become much more prevalent today. But of course, bullying was a major issue in those days.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a type of harmful bullying that it is today. And of course, that's something else that the public needs to be looking at. But I went into the military.
Okay. What branch did you serve in?
I served in the Air Force.
In the Air Force. Okay.
I never got to see many Air Force bases, but I did serve in the Air Force. Because of my job duties, I was dispersed, and I served in numerous locations in the United States, and many out of the United States for varying lengths of time. So education really was out of the question, aside from the training that I received to do the work that I did. After I decided to go to college, I went to college. I left the military with the sole purpose of going to college to get a degree to go to law school.
Where'd you go to college?
Edinburgh University in Pennsylvania.
PA, yes.
And I went back to Pennsylvania because that's at that time my grandmother was still alive, and we were very close. And I went back to be closer to her. And I was just about to graduate from college when she passed, and I'd already accepted admission to the Akron Law School.
Okay.
So I attended, and I've been in Ohio ever since.
That's good. What areas of law do you concentrate on when practicing here in Medina County?
Well, I used to say when I started my practice in Wadsworth 23 years ago, my specialty was door traffic. If it came in the door, I was going to try to make it. And if I couldn't, of course, I would refer it if it was too complex. But I've evolved into primarily two major facets. One is civil litigation, civil plaintiff work,
Okay.
and the other is probate and probate litigation. I do a lot of estate work, a lot of estate planning, assist in the administration of estates. I also handle a fair number of probate area prosecution cases. That is civil prosecutions of cases. That goes back to the financial exploitation of the elderly that I had referenced before.
Right, right.
That's an issue that comes up more and more and more.
Okay.
And I can say that I am successful. I have been successful on every single one of the elderly financial exploitation cases that I've taken to trial.
That's impressive.
It's a very difficult area, and it's a very emotional area. It's very difficult because, as I said previously, it attacks the self-esteem so much and the independence.
Of course.
It's very difficult to explain to a senior citizen why he's lost his home that he never knew was in jeopardy.
Wow.
And I had that case. I had a case, and that was here in Medina County. A gentleman found out on a Tuesday that his house was on the sheriff's cell steps that Friday.
Oh my gosh.
Because a family member had a power of attorney, had stolen his money, and then she hijacked the mail so that when the foreclosure notices were coming, she was intercepting them, so he never knew.
Oh my gosh.
And it was simply by happenstance that he was made aware. Now, we were able to save the house. We were able to stop the foreclosure. We brought suit against the family member. We didn't recover the money. We got judgment, but we haven't recovered the money. And unfortunately, that's a common theme in these cases.
Yeah.
The money's gone. The judgments, they're not being held accountable enough. And that's where I think criminal prosecution is a logical step to these cases.
Go towards those types of cases. You spend a lot. Obviously, you spend a lot of time practicing law. But Forrest, what do you like to do for fun?
Well, I think I'd previously mentioned I'm an outdoorsman. I love to hunt. I love to fish. And I know it's probably not PC for a lot of people. I love to trap.
Okay.
I love to land trap, particularly fox and coyotes. And I know it's a passion that has probably come through my life since childhood, really.
Okay.
Those were my major recreational activities as a child, and I pursue them whenever I can as an adult.
Do you like to hunt here in Ohio, or do you go back to PA, or?
I have hunted,
places?
yes. The answer very simply is yes. If I can get a license, if I can draw a tag, and if I have the time, I will go. I will hunt. I've hunted in New Mexico, I've hunted in Colorado, in Montana, in Wyoming, in Canada.
All over the place then.
I've hunted in Texas, all the Carolinas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York. Pretty much anywhere that I can get a license and I have the time to go. So if the circumstances allow, I'll do it.
Forrest, I know you brought some pictures here for us. Ben, could you run the pics?
Yes.
Tell us who's this lovely lady here?
Well, this is my fiance, Wertie Kratzer. And for the spelling, it's Wirtie. You have to get that right. And we've been together about 7 years.
Okay, wonderful.
She's also been instrumental in the thankless job behind the scenes of pushing a campaign, sometimes to a very reluctant candidate. That would be me.
So she's also your campaign manager?
She is the chief cook and bottle washer. She handles pretty much everything. She's brought an amazing array of organizational skills and design and internet savvy. Pretty much a lot of stuff that I would never have even tried to use in furtherance of my campaign. So,
Forrest, for every guest on the show, I like to play a game of fill in the blank. Okay.
Okay.
When I was a child, I blank.
And I know it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but I would have to say when I was a child, I worked.
You worked.
We were not an affluent family.
Okay. What kind of jobs did you do?
Everything.
Everything.
When I was 7, 8, my brother and I would go and pick potatoes at a potato chip farming operation. We would line up on the roads and pick the potatoes because we had to sort them by hand. They had to be sorted to a specific size, and that was before some of the technology that we have today. So we would do that. Later, of course, it was baling hay or working in the farms, working in the farms in our community. Odd jobs. My father was a contractor. My father was a builder, and from probably the age of 10. I was cheap labor on building houses. It was whatever needed to be done.
It seems like you've lived a long life of hard work.
Well, hard work is not something that anybody should ever be afraid of.
Course.
But you also have to learn to work smart, not
That's
just
true,
hard.
too. That's true.
And there has to be, you have to be able to strike a balance on that. I'm not afraid of the work. I feel that it was a good work ethic that carried me through the difficult times in the military and training. Mm-hmm. And it was a work ethic that got me through college and got me through law school when I was working to pay for those things, so I could minimize student loans, which I did.
Good.
And so work is a major part of anyone's life.
Sure.
And particularly if you want to contribute to the community. And I feel that my attitude towards community service and participating in community service and furthering community service really started in the military, and it's advanced all the way to today.
That's good. Forrest, what about the one place I want to visit is blank?
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Why New Zealand? I've never been there
Because in New Zealand you can hunt the red stag. That's the reason. And I've been to, I've hunted caribou. I've hunted mountain lion in Montana. I've been on some wonderful experiences. But that's one that I've always seen. I hunted moose in Newfoundland.
Wow.
But those majestic mountains of New Zealand and the red stag has always been an attraction, and far more than I know some people talk about African safaris on hunting, and that's a wonderful thing, I'm sure, but if I had my choice, it would be New Zealand and it would be the red stag.
Forrest, do you have any maybe neighborly advice to tell viewers right now watching in Brunswick, Brunswick Hills, or people watching on the internet?
I think the only real advice I can give is to vote. Vote your conscience. Vote the issues. Get out and vote. Make your constitutional right vote mean something. And I think in coupling with that, in combination with that, I think we have to decide the direction of the offices that we're voting on. Whether we're going to stay with the old guard or whether we want to see some new visions. Regardless of the outcome, I'm hoping that a dialogue will be initiated, regardless of the outcome of the race. That these issues that are very, very important to me and apparently very important to a lot of people are discussed and options are explored.
Forrest Thompson, candidate for Medina County Prosecutor. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you, sir.
Coming up to Brunswick.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ron Falconi, host of Beat Your Neighbor, and I wanted to thank Forrest Thompson for coming down today and chatting with us. Thought there's anything more profound to be said, so my name is Ron Falconi. I'm signing off. Arrivederci.